Hi, everyone. I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot and very happy to be here today. So I have Sean Bond with me. And Sean, say hello to everyone.
Hi, nice to meet you all. Looking forward to this. Been looking forward to it for a while. Had dreams before, so nice.
Okay, cool. So we are, I'm going to ask you to really give your background because your bio was a bit
Yeah,
sporadic and sketchy and jumped around. So I think it would be better if you basically say sort of how you started off on this path and you consider yourself a healer, a telepath, and you're also trying to teach people various techniques. So want to just elaborate on how you started down this path.
thank you. Yeah, similar to a lot of other people and going through life, figuring out what it is and having calls and my drive and will and bit very much attracted to the unseen world and secrets and what's like hidden, esoteric, magic, psychic abilities, and then it once I got out of high school and stuff, I was able to more flourish into that and had more mystical experiences without the constant pull down from 3D, and then had a lot of uh, things come to me and happen to me and experiences both positive and really negative that like pushed me to have to learn how to do certain things in order to keep going. Otherwise I'd have like chronic fatigue, constant overactive anxiety, I get heart attacks all the time, and then finding out that they're not just like random stuff that happens to you. You can figure out what it is, and sometimes there's data behind it, because it was like forced me to close my eyes and like figure out what I could do, and like sometimes screaming at internally, like at a high pressure or an intensity of emotions or whatever, and then learning how to overcome it, and then all these psychic sentences turning on, visions and dreams that lasted like days in compressed time, and had some visitations and um, a lot of compressed time experiences that formulated a larger amount of wisdom than I thought didn't knew what to do with, and then finding excuses to replay it in my mind and write it down and share it with the world.
Okay,
Um,
so in terms of, there's usually some inciting incidents, as they call them, incidents that happen to you that are maybe most paramount in your mind. Can you talk about anything particular that, you know, that led you down this path and that has actually made you come forward at this time?
Make me come forward. Just seeing the world as it is, and when I so uh, I had a bunch of experiences, like one when I was 17 that was like like a negative experience that kind of like forced me to become a healer, to survive, to heal myself, and that I was at a party and somebody handed me something I presumed to be cannabis, and it wasn't, and it was some horrible synthetic thing that I don't know what it was, and it was awful, and it made me kind of like physically, to people that were seeing me, pass out for a minute or two, and then in my experience I was compressed into this void space, like prison thing, for a large amount of years, and it kind of run me through these simulations of life, of different, like I keep going back to it because at the coming out what I have is now memory that is retrieving and coming back to me through a filter process, because when I was in there, I was dealing with a lot of stuff. I wasn't the only one in the prison, and it was like something. The goal of the prison was to try to was archonic, and it was their chess move to be like, because I got in the timeline, and they're like, oh, we can't have them here. So they try to take me out. They do this to a few different types of people, a lot of like movers and shakers, where they would compress them in a prison, and then they would take over their body and then turn them to a different path. So I was in there for a period of time. Through all the horrible stuff, I became immune to it, and then learned how to get out, and then was fractured like within it, and then only a few of my fractures got out, and then I could like pull the rest out over time after I was healing it. And as I was retrieving them, I got more and more memory back of like what was the time in there. Right before I came out of being whatever in people around me's perception has passed out, I was like time was really sped up, and I had all this like huge amount of memory coming in, and it was like overloading my head with a huge migraine. And I was like, whoa, because there was both a remembering filtering thing and a thing trying to get me to forget about the whole experience at the same time. And I was like freaking out and didn't know what to say to anyone, because I knew they wouldn't believe me, and I didn't even know what it was. And I kind of just ended up going home and then thinking about it for a few weeks, and then it fading. Like, you ever have that thing where you have a very mystical experience and then something just like tries to pull it away from you, similar to when you dream about it. And then I had a bunch of things take me down a path of spirituality, but like more into science. I was trying to figure out how to solve problems of the world, and then eventually it got triggered again that I had that experience, and it came with a large amount of emotions of trauma and fracturing and altars and all this kind of interesting stuff. And essentially, while I was in there, there was a bunch of fairly big predators in the prison that were reality manipulators of different types, and were using different beings in there as like energy batteries. And I was like kept in this illusion matrix within a matrix concept of
Okay,
like,
well,
oh, first
okay.
ones of the matrix were like my normal life, and it was trying to get me to do things and find things out about me and trigger certain events. And something was trying to actually use me to form abilities, because every being in the prison did not have the authority to create abilities, so they had to become parasites, steal them from other people. So it was trying to trigger me in like put out certain scenarios that triggered an ability of some type, like a friend dying or like car accidents. And then it kind of forced me to learn how to do something to resolve it. And it was putting thoughts in my mind while doing it. And then it would steal that ability and then restart it and give me amnesia, and then try other abilities, and it would keep harvesting off. So I have all these fractured alters
Okay,
that learn different abilities. And
okay.
now
So
I'm
can I
putting that all together.
can I ask you? Are you talking about an incident that happened at what age? Do you know?
17.
All right, and so sort of sounds like this was one incident that happened at, as you say, at a party, and then whatever they gave you triggered this other series of incidents. Are you saying they lasted a number of years after that, or what are you saying? Because it's not
Yeah,
clear.
sorry if it's confusing. So it's me being compressed into this realm, void space prison inside my own body. That was a thing that was made previously. That's because I've been really diving into what it is. It's something that I made in a long ass time. Oh, sorry. long time ago in another life, and it was stolen from me and then used against me. So there's all this karmic stuff with it. But then, so I was in there, and the compressed time within that space was like thousands of years compared to this every second here. So I was there for a really long time, and after like it ramped up in the beginning as a way to figure out who I am and put me in scenarios that were similar to this waking dream physical, that were trying to get me to forget that I was in something. And then it would do something to restart it, wipe my memory, and then keep me going into a perpetual Groundhog Day of things.
Okay,
And then eventually I started figuring out it was that, and then it had to make a bigger attempt.
But I'm still asking, how long did this last in your so-called normal life?
A few minutes, like, and I woke up in another room.
Only in the party, and then all of this stuff that happened, you're saying, was compressed into that time space, and then you came out of that, and then what was your life like after that? So were you preoccupied with that, or were you continuing your life as a relatively normal person?
In the first bit, it was kind of normal, but not it really. I was trying to make it normal because I didn't know what it was. And it was like I had a brain scramble after it. I also was kind of visited a bunch of times and then got a multiple amnesia barriers. So then I had a bunch of amnesia barriers come down at me all at once, trying to get me to forget about it. But I retrieved it later. So like coming in physical life, I woke up quite a bit, started doing research about it, didn't really find anything. So I then started going to unlocking the body and trying to figure out how to become smarter, because I felt like older in some way. And I was getting all these thoughts like come into my head, and invention ideas and ways to make the world better. Because I learned a lot while I was in there, and like after a while, things were constantly trying to test me, and so I had to learn how to create that as a coping mechanism. So I learned a lot about time and space. So then I kind of went into having a lot of dreams that were powerful, long, like days, and then compressed back. Also had visions show up. I had a few visitations. I'm gonna only talk about them a little bit because some of them aren't comfortable with me talking about them because they get attacked when I do. So I will try to figure out when I can talk about those ones, but I can talk about a few of them. Mostly though, I love talking about how to make the body better, stronger, faster, more intelligent, turning on the subtle energy skill sets, the esoteric anatomy, the things that we inherit in kind of superpowers and abilities, and everyone has the ability to unlock these. Even with whatever they inherited, all the blocks that are put on us, we can all push past it all.
Okay, so do you think that you would you classify this as a sort of super soldier situation, or what?
I love super soldiers. I have a bunch of friends that are into it. I also heal targeted individuals. So if anyone needs that, and no one is too far gone in healing, I do look into that stuff. I'm not entirely comfortable going into my lab or military interaction at the moment because I'm not quite sure what is entirely real, because I'm still breaking through screen memories with the military. But I'm absolutely interacting with factions from the future that are interested in seeing who's here now that could change the timeline for the better. They contact me quite interesting. I also interact with the Time Corps. They train me. As soon as I got out of that prison, they were like, I had emitting a lot of energy that I had to go back and camouflage. that I was emitting a lot of new energy that was not like a normal person would emit. So that triggered a lot of things, sensors. And then so they visited me, and then I got hired by them to help the timeline become better. I also teach that as an ability. It's really fun. Not everyone has the authority to do it, but everyone has the ability to earn it. And as you actually go through the initiation process and to make sure your ability isn't stolen, they will be able to accept more and more. Because, and it's not just them, because there's all these other species that have timeline ability of looking at the timeline, seeing the incursions, preventing them, the ones that want to control it negatively and influence the species, and the ways to make it a positive one, merging of timelines, the splitting of the different like catastrophic events to stop them from being on this one, and then many other bleed overs that are fun.
Okay. Have you ever read the book, The Seth Material?
The Seth Material, I've heard of it. I haven't read it. I'm going to write that down for later.
Okay. If you're, into timelines and all of that, I highly recommend The Seth Material downloaded by Jane Roberts. She's no longer alive, but there are many, I think there are many books, but there's the main book, The Seth Material. So in terms of your experiences, it sounds like you're dealing with certain beings then. Not clear. Are they classic aliens, one of the usual suspects, as they say? And, can you describe maybe your direct experience with at least one of those groups of beings?
Sure. Okay, I'll start with the ones that are most comfortable of me talking, and then I'll like kind of like, oh, okay, and then build it. Let's see. I remember very vividly this one time when I was staying with some super soldier friends in Boston, that I woke up in a hospital bed type thing. It was like more advanced looking. And I knew it was in my bed, and I started kind of opening my eyes. I didn't have my glasses, but it was, I could still see pretty well. And somehow my empathic ability was like super on. Like I could feel everything in the room very clearly too. And there were all these different species around the bed looking at me. And as soon as I started opening my eyes, and then I was like jolting and moving, they started reacting to me. And then one of the beings, which is I believe an Emerther type of gray, it was a female-ish kind of energy to it, and it was instantly telepathically communicating to me emotionally to my heart. And it was saying, it's okay, like you just went through a amnesia thing to like come back in the timeline. We know you. We're family. And it was like sending me a bunch of memories in positive emotions to bring clarification that you won't be harmed. It's not like a negative abduction or anything. And then she sent me a bunch of messages after that, but she kind of lulled me to sleep. And then she told me a bunch of reasons why we can't have that many interactions at the moment, because of a lot of things that were trying to monitor me and stop me, and that they were getting attacked while I was interacting with them more. So they gave me a to-do list of how to take care of that negative spiritual big brother that constantly tries to monitor everyone on the planet. And then working on that more brought out more memories and stuff. But it seems to be a lot of problems with a lot of people, and I'd recommend start with that if you want to have more experiences, because it is very dramatic to entangle with humans because of the targeting, and they're trying to constantly find out who we are. We're like all under witness protection, and we forgot who we are to make sure that isn't happening. We aren't getting discovered, and then while we're doing missions with our soul family or groups that are working with us, if something gets that strategy, it will communicate that to the virus aspect of the matrix, or negative ET agenda that have negative time travel that they stole because they did not earn it, to try to out chess move that or uncreate it if they can, which is a lot why we have so many amnesia barriers.
Okay, so you sound like you have been kind of focused on time travel, but I'm wondering, are you, in your life, sort of what is there any particular job that you do to stay alive, or particular skills that you had to learn in order to deal with reality, let's say, this reality?
Wonderful question. Yeah. Especially after I got past the initial, like, what is it? It's like encroaching reality of like ego, and slowly forget all that would empower you, and slowly forget those unique mystical experiences from the past. And I was like reminded of it. Before that happened, I was getting a lot of anxiety and emotion. I was like, what? Why do I feel just awful all the time? And then I had the memory, and then a lot of over anxiety came rushing in, and eventually started questioning it. I started wondering if it had an intelligence behind it, and it would react to me. And then I started like it would like ramp up the fear and overwhelm at me, and then it would kind of cripple me to the point where I was like in the shower crying. And then the water kind of helped as a technology to amplify memory and awareness of what it is that would work to do. So I would try anything. Definitely, I started like using things that I saw in shows, because I didn't know what psionics was at the time, but I knew about psychic abilities and chi and things like that. So I started kind of like doing things, and then I asked for help from my source, or I was holding this stone that I found out was like connected to dragons and stuff, and I felt this my higher self coming to my body, as well as like a dragon guide that was like talking to me, like not the same thing as Draco, as like elemental programmer of the planets that have many different residual images, hierarchical order of all elementals combined into one. Dream programs, all that is what they are, and people have their DNA. But it started giving me a whole bunch of awareness really quickly of like, you have the right to protect your reality if something wants to incur on you. Like something was trying to take my stuff or incur and slowly possess me. And then it made this fire, this light roar up inside my heart and push the thing out of me. And then it started giving me all this awareness. I started speaking this like cool light language that was kind of like dragonish, and doing these things with my hands that were, it's kind of like finger tutting, but or the magicians went into it, and I was like, whoa, this is way before that show came out. But and then it told me how to psionically punch something from a distance by like charging up a bunch of energy in my hands, and then feeling it kind of like at a deeper core with the solar plexus will. It's like a vibrational feeling. And then I reared back and punched it, and I felt this huge like weight of like darkness lift up off me, and I was like, oh God, it worked, yes. And then I was like having this surreal like moment that was like indescribably mystical, and I was like, wow, no one's gonna believe this, and which like whatever. But yeah,
Okay.
and then I was like, I can't deny dragons exist now.
Okay. So you dealt with dragons, but actually the question was, what are you dealing with in this reality? Meaning this reality, so-called normal life.
Okay.
So did you learn any skill sets in this life? Like, what do you do for a living right now? That kind of question. Okay.
I'm a healer, a massage therapist, a licensed artist, and I also work as an assistant for a CEO of a software just food distribution company, and I kind of teacher to many people, and I do consultations online and have a YouTube channel towards teaching people psionic abilities of different kinds and accumulating them, and showing there's proof of that, and that with psionic abilities we can make every aspect of our life more better and enhanced and happier, and find the greater secret of who we are and unlock it and be able to break past any limitation that we find ourselves in.
Okay. And do you feel that you have, I don't know, made your way through understanding that sort of key incident that happened to you back when you were 17, or is that still unfolding?
It's still unfolding because of the large amount of years that were in it compressed, but I have understood a key aspect of it, because it was like using spatial technology and time compression. That's like one of the big things that I'm really good at, and I was able to figure out, because there are like predators within the prison that are trying to trap me within, so the gist of it, they're trying to trap me within their own formed prison, and then figure out a way to keep me in there as an energy source, and then me finding out how to get out, and then doing certain things to
Okay.
polarize out, and then
Can I slow you down
continually
a
fight
minute?
them.
Okay, wait. So can I ask you, when you say there were predators in the prison, so can you describe some of the predators?
Oh yeah, God. So like, there are demons, there were succubi, there were big apex predators, there were things that were like not every animal, but there were like big sharks. There's like the predator things that we have in this world, but like big ones, like big octopus tentacle things, like things from that are kind of like H.P. Lovecraft, with like eyes, and that are like forming as in a reality overlay, and usually like to pick scary things that they can manipulate beings with fear, and a lot of shapeshifters, things that will devour other things and then form around their capabilities. So it was like very torturous. The first part, it was like an illusion to try to get me stay in there as long as possible as a battery, and then I started testing, and then I was less under their control for longer periods of time, and eventually to the point where that didn't work anymore, and they just put me in torture mode, like sent pain and all these types of everything they sent at me, influences, pain, torture, emotional abuse of different types, astral experiences, fears, going through it, all the stuff. I eventually forced me to learn how to do it myself and then overcome that thing. Kind of got in this battle that just kept going back and forth until I eventually became so strong enough. But it was fracturing in torture enough to the point where it kind of made me insane for a bit. And then I kind of like just wrecked them. But eventually that just lasted for too long, and it's like, this isn't working. And then they started putting me through, because you can't really die in the prison, unfortunately, and they just kept pulling me apart and torturing me and splitting me, and then that turned me into the kind of this kind of predator that used anything that I was facing. I learned how to become that, and then bigger, and then I got more of my sanity back, and then they kind of put me through a thing of being super depressed and suicidal, and then trying to overcome that, but it just being very sad. And then I eventually asked for help, and then my source connection helped shine through a certain amount of love and inspiration of like, oh, you don't, that's not how you get out by fighting these things. You have to unite them, and also kind of bribe your way out, because there's like certain prison guards in it, and get everything to agree to letting you out. And there's also a to-do list. So it was eventually, I was getting more into love at the end of it. There was still a fairly long period of time though. And then
Okay, now
that
again,
synced up with
you're
versions of me
saying,
outside.
okay, but you're saying this happened in just a short period of time, right? A few minutes
Yeah,
after
on the outside. Yeah, a few minutes.
But you seem to have experienced this on an ongoing basis. So were you going through life as we would agree, consensus reality? Were you going through that as like a semi-normal person? Were you considered insane by the people around you, your family, etc.? How were you coping, you know, with that going on in your mind and then with so-called reality?
That's a good question, and thank you for bringing that. Before, because like after I got out of the prison, there was like this quarantine zone of void that was like, me getting a lot of information and going through it, and it was like information was coming out of me and going in, and it's like take out the torture experiences and give that back to him later, and then me, so remembering things at different times. And I was getting visited as soon as I started flashing out of that experience in temporal dilations by both a group that was angelic, and they sent me to a healing place to put most of myself back together for a long time. And that was wonderful. It was just full of light. And I went through a bunch of different healing teachers. And then I learned a bunch of awareness. And that's most of where my healing abilities come from.
Again,
And then,
hold on a second. It's just because you're actually, you're not
I'm
not
answer that,
answering
sorry.
my question in the, you know, so what I need you to do is define when you're dealing with this reality. So I assume you exist in this reality and that you were dealing with people in your life. Sounds like you would have been in high school. Then I don't know if you went on to college, but how are you dealing with people in your life during this time? And when you say healers came along, were those healers in this reality or those healers in this so-called world that you were dealing with?
Yeah, sorry for not answering that right on.
Okay.
So I handled it fairly well. I kind of pushed it away in the first bits and pretended it didn't exist because it had a lot of emotions when I looked at it. I didn't know how to handle that until later, but I got all these awareness is from what I was saying with that that were coming in on how to heal and put myself back together, and then I researched concepts. Didn't have that many people show up in my life that were like me, so I kind of went into research mode online and stuff. But I did have become a Reiki master through one that showed up in my life synchronistically, and a few other healers and psychic, or getting rid of psychic parasites, and people that worked with light. Also found some people in Wicca and that were local, but they weren't really triggering this. And then eventually I learned how to form a way to read the DNA, the past life memory, download that in, and then form abilities together. I got into reverse engineering abilities, and then I teach people and unlock their dormant abilities with them.
Okay, so did you finish high school?
Yeah, I finished high school, went on to college for a little bit for business, got out of that, then formed my own healing business somewhat, not too much after that, and then moved out, and now was in Delaware, now went to Boston, then to Connecticut now, and I'm living pretty nice.
Okay, so in other words, you were, if like people were in your life, they didn't think you were like crazy all the time. You were just like a person, a regular person, as far as they were concerned, right?
Yeah,
So this information and this stuff coming into you was not interfering substantially with your ability to cope with reality. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I usually kept that in the background. It was turning me into an introvert more before I had all the experiences. I was a little outgoing. I could like talk to most of the cliques at least a little bit, but wasn't exactly happy. But I was trying to find what made me happy. But yeah, and then introvert, the huge overwhelming anxiety and all that pushing me when I get home. It seemed there was a good timing thing involved with my life where as soon as my higher self and whatever knew that I was, okay, I'm done with people. Okay, now take care of this. And then it would
Okay.
come on.
And so is there anything that became like a sort of a natural expression? In other words, you went into the healing modalities as a sort of a release or a way of exploring what you could do with what was coming in. Is that right?
Yeah, I kind of had to in the beginning. Besides the anxiety, things were trying to stop my heart and also shut down my organs a few different times. And
So in a sense, did you classify yourself as it was what's called a targeted individual? Did you feel that you had electronics coming from outside your body being aimed at you?
absolutely.
Okay.
And it
Did
was,
you have family members that were in the military?
yeah. My
Okay.
grandpa and my dad had a bunch in his sign. He also had Freemasonry going on.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I had a lot of targeting from the military. I'm like kind of filtering through it all because of both the screen memories, and also I gained the ability to go back in time and stop things from happening. So a lot of the incursion visitation from like the military was mostly negative when I first got into it. I would also tune into like the projects of where it's like located and track it back in time and like what name they use. A lot of them go after like deities and god names, and they use that to harvest the energy and use it as an authority to keep it going. The negative projects are not that anchored in time. They can be but like some of them are really hard to get rid of. So the best strategy is for the people that find them as self-involved, shift it out of being a negative into neutral, into eventual positive project by being involved in it. And I see that most of the time when I'm helping them. The ones that my higher self said, no, this is an incursion, just put up enough energy to prevent it and go back in time and put that forward and then fade it out of my reality. I would do, but some of them, I'm gonna be careful which ones I talk about, but my higher self seemed to see value in them in some ways, especially the ones that triggered me to form more types of blueprints for abilities that I can eventually bring to you guys.
Okay. Now, did you think that you were telepathic?
I also teach people how to do that. My telepathy is based on heart telepathy, and in the beginning, my empathic ability was turned up all the way, like crazy. I could feel into everything deeply. I could feel neighbors, and I'd get like clairaudience stuff. And then that would be used against me because and anyone that gets this too, the dimmer switches for this is they will try to turn up your ability to absorb negative energy, turn that all the way down. They'll try to turn it back up, of course, and the ability to feel things super deeply. And you can turn up emotional power and empathic power, and that won't be negative. And let go of what is the imprintation from the external reality of them trying to get you to be overloaded and be torturous on your emotions. And because there's two empathic abilities, the one in the ego, parasympathetic autonomic nervous system, automatically running programs. Let go of that. Embrace the one deep in your heart that connects you to all and infinite, and that has no overwhelming aspect to it. Then I combine that with my other senses like clairvoyance and clairaudience, and there's kind of a message box that contains every message you've ever received in your life, even if you weren't ready for it at the time. A lot of messages from Earth, your soul family, and then you start engaging with them. start with a back and forth, slow kind of text messaging, formulate you can even use things you know about in reality, like emails and all that, and organize it. And then it eventually leads up to live Skype call, and that's pretty dramatic. And I had some telepathic conversations with some beings, and then I also had it challenged, and then been able to find out how to get it resilient, strong, and be able to have discernment with who's talking to me. Because I had beings that pretended to be other things.
Okay, so you feel that you've had Skype calls with other, you've had Skype calls with some of these beings? I'm not sure what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean that as a metaphor. It's like like text message telepathy is like you go slow at it, so you don't just send any thought you're doing, you edit the thought. Then walkie-talkie, when you're more able to go back and forth, receptive, projective.
So these are more what we'd say were basically this is just your classification system using a metaphor of what we currently communicate with in this life. Okay, so in terms of how you perceive information, like do you consider yourself a precog?
I do. I like that term too. I'm not the most engaged with it, because when I do engage with it, my awareness of time in the future is it's constantly changing. And if we're all doing a job, the more it's changing, the more unpredictable, because there are things trying to predict it and then gain a leverage on that. Then I get hints, and based on what's more significantly anchored in time, what's needed based on motivations of all the driving forces involved and what they end up agreeing to in the last chess move, and what is less so. And then I constantly try to make that predictive model better. And so far, the hints that I ask for about the future, and then also get messages of like, oh, turn left, right, and then avoidance and ways to get out of harm's way. That has been very successful, and I've avoided car accidents and near-death experiences and all kinds of things with that, and also predicted some cool things happening with this lockdown thing. But
Oh, okay. So is there anything in terms of what you do that is, you sound like you're extremely involved with your mind and perhaps emotions, but are you dealing anything physically in this reality? Do you feel that you said you're using Reiki. I don't know what form of Reiki, you're using. So can you talk about anything you do in this reality that might be in the more physical realm?
So I also am forming together a training routine for people that want to combine getting stronger with psionics. I get into some of my more passions are how to trigger the body to have more energy abundance, infinite energy is output. And I've been getting really good with that. And also the emotional output of the heart and the ability of love to overcome any problem. I used to be fighting apex predators that would come at me. It would start with like little like parasites, then demons that would show up, and then archonic demons, and then eventually like I track back, there's this puppet master thing that tries to manipulate every parasite that keeps going up. And then that would have me training and fighting and doing sword stuff and just like working out a bunch. I would combine psionics with working out as like you put the energy output, and then psionic punches a lot. And then I started like oh, okay, this isn't working that great, but it is kind of, so let me combine it with love. That's the most dramatic thing for me. Being able to unlock the heart to the level where you can be happy all the time, be able to express love to things that have never felt it, and then turn on their hearts, and then they no longer feel a need to attack you anymore because they see you as themselves. again, and that's because they're fractured and they're becoming whole again. I also go into DNA programming and learning how to reclaim superpowers that were lost, like in ancient times when the Earth took big hits, like the fall of Atlantis and all that. And superpowers were like stolen by a bunch of invading forces, demons, and taken to hell realms, and people having to get those parts back. And then yeah, so I do a lot of physical stuff with that and try to take it to break past all limits, to never give up. I also went through a bunch of suicide programs and learned how to undo that and overcome that, help people with emotional smack releases, helped a lot of people through suicide programs when they're triggered, when they're going deep into their power. That's the dark forces will be like, oh, we can't do anything more, take them out. It sucks. But yeah, and even if whatever classification a person in super soldier, psionic person, time, or communication, any type of abilities, you can bring out your great gifts. Most people don't open their presents, but like when you do, and you know your purpose, you know your truth, that is the source of your happiness. Knowing truth, it triggers, it's the DNA, the gene key for happiness, the truth about the reality, yourself, and you be able to help and with what you're doing here and help your brothers and sisters awaken themselves to eventually we throw off the parasites and we free our world.
Okay. So do you have any sort of family members that I don't know that you have memories of in certain situations that had to do with kind of creating the drive for you, or even the manifestation at this age of 17? Was there any like outside influence, and or in a negative or positive way? You know, like it kind of sounds like you come from possibly an Illuminati bloodline, and so you might have had some Illuminati-esque sort of interference in terms of certain family members. So, you know, you don't have to reveal. I'm not trying to get super personal here, but I'm trying to paint a picture of where you got to this certain kind of place where you felt you were in a prison. Something has to have driven you in there. Do you know what I'm saying? That happened a long time before you took this drug that seems to have released some awareness, right? On that incident of this when you were 17. So in the years building up to 17, did you feel that you had any particular family or other outside influences, if you understand what sort of the Illuminati package is all about, from that direction?
Okay, I'll give you with what best I know about it. From the best of my knowledge, my parents aren't very aware of things. My dad is a 32nd degree Freemason, but he's not that entangled with them. He kind of stopped going, and he's in Tennessee. My mom isn't that aware. She's had experiences and has experienced psionic attack, but she kind of just phases out of her mind and just goes back to sleep. But that's okay. That's her safety mechanism. My sister she kind of was very haunted, so it was kind of like, but she kind of took on some big predators for me, so I thank her for it, and she kind of like gave me the kid gloves spiritually to lessen that. Grandpa was in is the reason I'm camouflaged, but he was in a war and some other stuff. They didn't really talk about that. I got my grandma came from has German blood to a royal family. My great grandfather was like a playboy that got was it when you are shunned by the family, and then the rest of the family kind of didn't do well after World War II. But
So you had
they don't really know.
like a
They
black,
weren't able to tell me. Go ahead.
black sheep of the family type person.
Yeah, Yeah, fair. Yeah, everyone else was. I mean, I was still going into science, but anytime I felt alone, having to do with describe my experiences, so I couldn't really talk to anyone. I did also have some weird experiences that I'm trying to remember when I was a kid, where my grandparents would take me to the Poconos Mountains, and I'd have a lot of memories I couldn't remember from that. And I also track back bases there a lot. I don't know if you've ever heard of anything in the Poconos, but it's
Sure.
kind of weird.
That's upstate. Is that upstate New York?
It's,
I don't.
yeah, I think Pennsylvania. So
And
right
in
under it.
Pennsylvania. Well, yeah. So, okay. All right. What about Montauk? Are you aware of Montauk?
I am, and it's very close. It's right across the pond from me. I have had bleed over interactions, though I've mostly been forcing it out of my reality because it's mostly negative mind control stuff that's trying to change who I am. And I've mostly had to deal with handlers that try to control me or limit me or steal my authority and abilities, and have to shut them down or open their heart up is the method I do now to try to break them out of their mind control. And then they start drama internally, and it's nice. And rebellion.
Okay. And what about the idea of giants? Do you have you dealt with what might be termed giants in this reality or other realities?
I love that your questions. So in Delaware, there's a bunch of weird stuff that's covered up in history. A lot of the states have that. Like barely anyone knows what was in New York before, when the natives were there. And in Delaware, there's like this epicenter for the 5 nations with the Lenape. They call themselves the original people, and they used to be a large leadership role of royal families in the natives. And they have stories and peace agreements with giants. And I know I met a guy in Delaware that sells these really sacred green stones that were the stone. I recommend that to people, that when I called for help, a dragon came and helped me. And it's through that stone. And he says they were used by the Native American kings for royalty. And when he has accumulated all these stone artifacts, some axe heads that are like huge, bigger than what a person can hold, and like these big spears, and some bones. So he's given me a lot of evidence of that giants existed. And then I went down that rabbit hole and how they found that they are. I do track relic species of different type psychically. I can teach people how to do this too. Especially if they're entangled with you in some way, or if you have the calling card in your DNA, then you can track back if any in your lineage still exists. And I track a lot of the giants to being underground mostly, a lot in stasis pods, interestingly, but some awake in those inner Earth pockets that have like artificial suns and stuff. Those are interesting.
All right. So in terms of your relationship with the military, is this ongoing or not?
Great question. My one with the future faction, they're a lot more nicer, and they're more free will oriented. They don't want to own me, so I'm more wanting to interact with them.
All right.
The
Would you
ones
call
in
that the
current
secret
time,
space?
they're not that fun. I try to avoid them if I can, but they have indicated that they know about me. And I've had some individuals that show up, and so when I was like doing some rebellious stuff to like get information out, I was like handing out cancer cures and and free energy technology and pamphlets to people, and I had like people approach me about that.
Okay. Well, actually, what I mean is like the secret space program. Are you aware of the secret space program?
Yeah.
And what, I don't know if you're talking about when you say the future military or whatever, is that what you're trying to refer to? How are
Covert
you?
military space program.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, and then also going off planet, places like Mars and the moon that are heavily, where the secret space program is heavily involved. Do you feel that you have had interaction with them?
I haven't really come out about it, but I do get bleed overs about it. So I'm still forming together with what is real, what is not real, and I'm okay with it not being real or it being real, and I get a lot of emotions, and it's really affecting me. So as far as I know, I'm getting some, but if I'm not and it's mind control, I'm fine with that. It's whatever. But yeah, I.
Okay, so do you have emotional sort of reaction when I say Mars, or emotional reaction when I say moon? And do you have any memory of experiences in either place that you're willing to talk about? I mean, you don't, just because I asked you doesn't mean you have to talk about it right this minute. But what I do here on the show when we're dealing with this kind of stuff is also try to jog your memory so that even if you don't answer here, you can take it back and think about it later.
Most of my interaction that I'm willing to talk about has to do with me being approached in temporal dilation visitation and taken somewhere, some base. It's not very obvious where it is, at least in the memory that I get back. And I am having an alter trigger that gets me in more awareness of what I've already learned. Some of the alters have awareness of past lives where I learned abilities, and they ask me to teach people and train them. So when I say psionic specialist, that's my career path there. Um, I'm not the greatest expert in everything at the moment now because I'm still opening everything, but like each year I will tune into more of my stuff. A lot of it's me doing psionic work from a distance, peace agreements, making sure a battle goes well, influencing people not to die.
Okay, but the question was about Mars and the moon. So you're saying, are these things happening? Are you interacting with those spaces, or are you talking about Earth or inner Earth, or where are you talking about, or do you know?
I get this. Uh, one second. So I get this thing in my heart that I'm getting this message that I shouldn't talk about it yet.
That's fair enough.
So I'm letting you know that I'm okay with eventually talking about in the future. I just got to take care of some things that want to know who I am, and make sure that they're no longer a problem before I can talk about some of these bigger missions. And every time I tune into and have a memory come back or I retrieve it myself, it's my brain and heart like to focus on things that are very meaningful and dramatic. And a lot of times I can't talk about those ones. So I haven't really formed too many of the ones that I'm allowed to talk about. So I'm having to go back. Oh, am I allowed to talk about that? I was interacting with, there was like a bunch of battles. I remember things with genetic augmentation alters with some of the soldiers that had them kind of having this huge strength and a cocktail of drugs and this psionic shielding that made things bounce off of people. What can I remember interacting with mantid species, some Naga. Mostly of my interactions I try to keep on the planet because there's a lot to do here. But they do come calling. And the most part now, I don't really have to go places. I can resolve most of the missions that they send me from where I am, and I'm amplifying my ability to have a chess move and effect on the planet in that greater way. And I teach people how to do this kind of like a game. Earth will talk to you and send you missions of like, oh, there's this thing going on, or this is a pivotal role that's going on in politics, and this person may die and influence the safety bubble around them. And then all this other stuff. I also had dreams with some of the political figures, and like we're on planes and stuff and talking.
Okay.
So
Well, now we've been going for a while, Sean, and I appreciate you being, forthcoming here. I know it's not easy. So perhaps we can ask the chat. We have an ongoing chat room here. If anyone wants to ask you any questions, and because I've been asking you a lot of questions, and see if there's any question that they particularly have, any burning questions out there before we try to wind this down. Okay.
Sounds good.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
And then in the meanwhile, while I check the chat quickly, if there's anything you want to talk about that you haven't had a chance to, any subject matter that you'd like to cover, go ahead.
Okay, sure. So I'm very interested to hear some things about what you think about the upcoming plans for a contrived alien invasion and some other things with that, because I've been getting a lot of hints about that, and that there are things ramping up accumulation of resources around the planet and making council meetings to try to negotiate upon what they all agree with. And then when I rate how close that is to happening, it's increasing. But I'm not ever going to say a date because it will change.
Okay, well, in terms of the so-called, I call it a fake real alien invasion, because we're already invaded all the time by real aliens, and we have been throughout history, as you may know. But this comes from, again, maybe you know this, but from Randy Kramer, the super soldier Marine, who went on stage near Yelm about a year ago, I think it was now. And I was there at a conference, we were both speaking, and he talked about the military being sick of not being able to, I would say, in my words, integrate what's real, what they deal with in, the secret space program, on and off planet, et cetera, with our reality here, which is so kind of behind the times. And so they want people to become more aware of what's really real, which includes aliens. So for that purpose, they want to also, they have to create a storyline, a narrative in which they are the winners. Okay, obviously this is the military speaking, from, again, Randy Kramer's point of view. So they told him to go forward and talk about what they want. And interestingly, I ran this by Captain Mark Richards, who I interview on a regular basis for the last 5 years. I have 12 interviews so far with him, and I'm in contact with him. And I can say that he actually thought that was a good idea, believe it or not. So what happens is they want to own the narrative. So they have to have a fake invasion, even though there's a real invasion. And the trouble is that, of course, that not all the various alien races are going to be on board with this and stay to the sidelines while they have their holograms and have battles with, holograms and so on, and bring to the fore in the process the fact, 1, they're winning, 2, they're in control, 3, there are, we're not alone in the universe. These are super obvious things, but believe it or not, of course, there's a huge sleeping population out there who basically don't acknowledge this as part of their reality. So this is what they're dealing with. Now, how close is that to happening, and is it going to happen even in that way? Is a good question. I think there's a lot of potential for some of it to happen, and some of it to be what we call Project Bluebeam. In other words, fake. And they're going to choose one race, and I really sort of I was bothering Randy Kramer a lot at the conference and driving him crazy by trying to get him to admit who, what would be the so-called invading species, because that's a whole can of worms, like how they're going to behave and how they're going to look and all this kind of stuff. And obviously a lot of even right now, for example, reptilians are coming in with ships through portals. Places, war zones are the most popular places for them to come and get people off and take them off planet, right? So then they're like slave ships, if you will. But in so-called normal life, they also do appear in our reality in various ways. So it's much easier for them to do it in a confused environment. Then there's the AI. We have alien AI invading, as well as the human sort of generated AI that may actually go back to the alien, to various alien races anyway, being reverse engineered, etc. So it's kind of a can of worms, as you can imagine. So it's not a simple, easy thing. But there's reason to believe that they might be working towards this goal, because they're also doing some things like, I think you said you're back east, but in New Jersey recently, there was this blimp. I don't know if you heard about this incident, which was seen from thousands of people pulled over their cars on the side of the road to watch this so-called blimp, but they thought it was a UFO. And what I think was happening is the blimp was actually, projecting a hologram of a UFO. And then when the news media was reporting it, it appeared to be, oh, that's just a blimp. All these people are crazy, right? And so that was probably a test, one of their tests for this kind of thing. So I think if you want to know about that, you need to watch where so-called sightings are happening, and what of those sightings might be actually holograms that they're testing their technology before they actually launch this type of thing. And we were told 15 years ago by Henry Deacon, who came out under his own name, Arthur Neumann, that when they rolled out the viruses, they would roll out everything all at once. So they would have a financial reset. He even named all these things because they were told this in the military that he worked for back in those days. They were planning, viruses, financial reset, shortages like of water and things of that nature, and then alien invasion and so on, and eventually war with China that would be previously planned and arranged, with China being involved in that arrangement. So, which in a sense, it's kind of a mixed bag, because you have people on all levels, right, operating. So the answer to your question, I'm sorry to be so long-winded here, but it's not a simple answer, yes or no. I'm trying to paint the playing field here. So in a sense, yes, maybe what you're getting is some of this stuff coming out.
Yeah. Thank you for going into that. I appreciate your perspective on it. Yeah, I agree with that. And this plan has been talked about for a while, and it shifts based on like what is going on, and it's not always successful, and things that are having to be delayed. And it's like some people want it to happen, some people don't, and it's like the mix in between because of who's trying to control it. I get a lot of missions from Earth. Like when I wake up, I get like on my third eye dashboard, like energetic projection. I get indications of like, oh, alert, and this needs taken care of, and then it gives me a time scale of like how when it's happening, and then I've made it so that I get quite a bit of precognitive time before it happens for a lot of the things. And I was called, especially before the lockdown happened, that there would be a lot of stuff going on with this plan, like right before it happened. And I was getting a lot of signals that there's ramp ups, there's attempts, there's like beings that are trying to be the species, both the in the melodrama of both the light and the dark side, that the dark that shows up, and then the light that saves. Um, and they're kind of shifting in and out, and Earth is like, because there's not that many species that want to volunteer for this, and the ones that do aren't that great. So that she's like running through them, and then perceiving a timeline of it happening, and if they don't do well, which most of them haven't, then they get stopped from that. And then also I got a lot of suicide programs that would be happening, and I had to send a bunch of energy to help the people going through that, because the dark force is trying to take out as many people as possible from the timeline, because each person here as an individual is very important. They're meant to be here. They're holding the line for the timeline to be better, and the dark's trying to get people to want to fade out, and it's lessening the defense of the light. And so I've been helping people energetically to support them from killing themselves, so that more people survive on the timeline. Also, things have been trying to take out the food supply. Me and my friend Chris, he owns the food distribution company, one of the food distribution company software things, and he's very oriented to stopping the Hunger Games society thing, that tries to like phase that out. And so far, he's holding his strong, and the dark cabals are sending out rituals to try to weaken the whole system of it. And it's like, I'm trying to say no, that's not helping anyone. This psychopathic plan to cull the population needs to stop, and it's not being as successful, but it's quite obvious that this whole scenario enforces that to happen, from the starving of people, and keeping them from getting the ability to maintain themselves. And as everyone has been kind of challenged energetically to reinforce the foundation they have in their reality and their root, quite a bit. I've been getting like signals where the Naga tried to do it, the Draco tried to be like, oh, we're gonna be in this melodrama, like these giant spider people, a bunch of insectoids. There's like cockroach people or something, and they're not, as far as I can tell, they're not going to be the ones in the melodrama, because they would fail, and then a few other ones, but there are attempts. And also, I was getting that a bunch of UFOs were showing up in the sky and waking people up in local bubbles of reality. And part of the quarantine was to keep everyone in home so that they wouldn't see this. It's like a mother delay tactic. Have you heard that thing where there's a bunch of ET species that are positive beneficial, that are enforcing laws on us in like get rid of slavery, or we stop trade agreements?
Well, there's always been so-called beneficial, species, and if you follow the work of Ashana Dean and the Guardians, they are a group of species that are said to hold our best interests at heart and be defending sacred ground, as Alex Collier would call it. So, but the deals they try to make actually don't work normally. So because we're dealing with a sort of a dark contingent here on Earth that is ensconced, the dark has had sway over the Earth. Now that's changing right now. That is shifting in a major way, and that's what this current battle is really all about. But it's not done yet. It's not won in this reality yet. And so I guess in answer to your question, when the good side is fully in power, then those so-called deals may be viable. but at the moment, there may be temporary deals to get technology or to maintain access to certain planetary planets and going interstellar, other places. So this is the kind of dealing they do, I think. But I don't think, everyone likes to put things in sort of what, I don't know, you might call it a paternal parent-child relationship. When they deal with ETs dealing with us, they always act like it's parental. It's, they're in the power position and we're not. But actually that has shifted a great deal. So less and less is there an ultimatum from some, so-called positive for the holding our best interests in mind, telling us, if you don't do this deal, such and such will happen. I think that part of this free-for-all that we're seeing, in a sense, is us waking up and having to defend our own sort of sacred ground and take control, and in the positive way. And so the negative is coming at us stronger than ever. So it's like that. So kind of to answer your question. Now, there are a few questions in the chat that I think I can get. One person wants to know if you have, Phil, you have altars. It kind of sounds like you said you did, but do you want to answer that more specifically?
Sure. I also love altar work and going into helping people bring themselves back to wholeness. So I'm currently bringing all my altars back to one. A lot of fractures from the void prison, and then so like I categorize positive, neutral, and negative altars. Negative altars made from fracture and abuse and splitting of the soul through action onto me or forcing me to do something, and then in that mostly in that space that I have, the void prison, and then neutral ones, if they're not really harming me, there's a classification, but the positive ones are when I get like everyone has like a type of these, and it's not any fracture. It's like a compartmentalization of memory and with amnesia barrier of an interaction with visitations of your soul family, ET groups, inner earth, all that. And that being my positive one there. And then there's also the ones when I needed an ability or something to out chest move death or my perceived being in harm, then that would create an altar of that had the power to perform the action. That usually has me tap into my stream of light tree of all my lives, and then bring up a life that is capable of performing the action that is needed, and then it brings that up as an altar. And so I've been talking internally to a bunch of them, and then figure out what they need in wholeness, healing, and then merging back into one. And then it being, so I had the positive and the negative ones that I needed to keep in a box and cage, otherwise they would try to take over. And then also the ones that I haven't dived into yet because I'm told that I'm not ready yet, but I'm earning it every day.
And another question, someone wants to know if you know, I'm going to expand their question, but they said, do you know Enki? But do you know Enki, Enlil, Anu, and that sort of group of beings, and obviously the Anunnaki, as we call them, or Nibiru, from Nibiru. And maybe even, can you talk about your understanding of Nibiru and that planetoid?
Okay, sure. I'm not going to claim to be an expert on this. It's what I've been able to tune into psychically. I've heard, of course, all the rumors and stories and stuff, but I like to re-examine it and then go in a neutral position and see what I have gained in evidence. And it appears that we do have their DNA. Some have different rare lineages of the individuals, and then some of those added together. With my interaction with the Enki, Enlil, Anu, and all that, They do appear to have existed, and also have versions of themselves around the planet. They don't exist as just one being as a multidimensional form. As soon as they got in here, Earth like did some chess moves to like, okay, you're going to be an influential figure that's going to hold up a lot of stuff coming at you that programs the entire race and all that, and an introduction. So they're kind of dealing with a lot of drama that makes them a little insane and fractured. Um, so, you know, they got some good and then there's some bad to every one of the individuals and their own alters and what they have to deal with. Humans are very similar with their minds, stuff they going on. They're not as empathic or emotional. Like we see, humans seem to be very powerful in potential for emotional body, more so than most other species as we're a super hybrid. And it's very evidential, like in the DNA that I've found for evidence of them and their tinkering with our genetics, such as chromosome 2, and it looked like chromosomes being spliced together, and then the transposable elements and jumping DNA, and that being like evidence for splicing manipulation, and then all this memory and what the Syrian and Orion empires coming together, Syrian B especially. I find that there is some type of binary traveling star system that has a few different planets in it with like a very dim star that moves that they've been traveling in that linked to ours and is kind of like under a large amount of camouflage with our solar system with advanced technology for it. And that brought over a lot of spiritual immigration, including them. I also read some of the Egyptian gods, some Greek god interaction, and like the higher dimensional like fourth and fifth usually, but like some like going into raw of being like sixth or seventh dimensional. Their current state of being, I saw like there was like this big shifting around of where they are in their spirits. So like some of them would be incarnate into Orion Draco reptoids, and then some would be like in more humanoid-ish shape-shifting giant form. Some actually had to become in the game and the drama to resolve a lot of their karma. So some of them are their parts and sparks are now incarnate as humans. And also they got an engagement chess game. Some of them are in hell realms. And so like a bunch of the versions of them think they're the only one or the peak one. So it's really interesting to observe that. And then some of them did some really horrible things to our timeline and were ejected from the game. So some of those parts got ejected and some are still here. But like every one of the members has some of their parts here, of course. So they're not like all gone, but
Okay.
they seem to be exposing things through what they're wanting to do if they're fractured or being controlled by some negative force. And some of them are healing.
All right. So we're going to wrap this up now, Sean. I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. And it's been a lot of fun and very interesting to hear, sort of your view of these various realities, and nice to hear that you made a way to kind of cope and do some positive things here on Earth, in spite of some of the stuff that has gone on with you. So again, want to thank you for coming on the show, and any parting words.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really honored. Great meeting you, and thank you for everything you're doing for everyone and holding up such a big weight on your shoulders and chugging along and running with it, and being a flag holder for so many soul families to unite and become aware of each other and share their information. I really, really appreciate it. It's such an amazing feeling for everyone, and changes the timeline for a better. So I really appreciate you and everyone else. Thank you for listening in and being brave enough to challenge the 3D reality. I know it's a little out there and it's hard to understand, but thank you for at least listening and putting it on your shelf. You don't have to believe anything I say. I don't need anyone to. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this to see if I can help as many of you to rise into your power and be who you're meant to be this life, and bring that gift to the world. Because if you're shining your truth and who you are and your power, and not afraid of your power, because we're one of our biggest fears is that we're more powerful than we can ever imagine, and that we can use that power with love in combination, like dancing binary star systems in our body coming together, to greatly create momentum towards our freedom, towards our species becoming the antidote for evil, that every one of the species in our DNA of our genetic superhybrid library can find us as a resolution for the suffering and the drama and the blocks that they've been dealing with for so long. And then we overcome the hardest difficulty game that we find ourselves in, of limitation.
Okay, and can you give people your website address?
Sure. Psionicleague.com if you want to join the league, or contact me or some information. I also do consultations. Just sign up to the scheduler. It's hard to reach me, but eventually I'll get hold of you also on YouTube, Psionic League, and Facebook. Can you put your information for? I'm gonna also put this video up later. Here.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, I'm projectcamelot.org, projectcamelot.tv, and projectcamelotportal.com. They all go to the same place. And of course, I'm on YouTube. Project Camelot is my main YouTube channel. I also have an alternate YouTube channel that I don't know what the actual name is. It's something like PCTV Network. But you know, there's another PCTV out there. So that's when it gets very confusing. But at any rate, the main channel, everything's located on my website, and that's where you should go, because more and more videos, if they decide to delete them, I have to go mount them to another space and then embed them in my website. So that's the best place to find all my work nowadays is if you're missing a video, you think I did a show and it disappears, it's on my website.
Yeah,
so
tell us if they do, because like I'm glad you're keeping along with it and not letting it stop you, because that's censorship. And anytime they try to censor you, just put the rules, because they're entering your game to like, oh, now you're agreeing to relinquish your power to the people and their armies of whatever. Because I see a lot of YouTube and other that they have like dark sorcerers that work for them, and or somehow, and they like enslaving demons and doing really dark rituals, and it's awful. But you can like bring all that power out of their hands in dead man switch of, oh, you're entering my game, you're signing up for this. If you decide to delete my video, then this and this and this happens. And as soon as they do,
well, I mean, along those lines, what I have done and what I found actually seems to have worked, but I can't necessarily say why it worked. So I recently had a video. I had 2 strikes. It was about to get my last strike where they would delete my channel. And then I put a notice out on everywhere saying that I was looking to do a class action because they are violating my freedom of the press and freedom of speech, because they actually deleted where just I'm talking. So they don't like what I have to say, right? So they deleted it. So then all of a sudden, out of the blue, and I also wrote to them an appeal. And in my appeal, instead of defending myself, and by the way, they only give you a few lines to do this in, contrary to what people may think. You can't give them documents or all this kind of stuff. All they give you is a few lines of appeal, which they reject almost out of hand. But you basically, I went back and said, I've been telling them that they're going to be indicted, that they're going to be basically, you know, the law, that in essence, they're going to be interfered with eventually because of the way they're violating my freedom of speech, freedom of the press. And as a journalist, you know, and I'm a, you know, a real journalist, contrary to some people, even when you want to call it that. So, you know, I'm a trained journalist. So they are actually violating freedom of the press when they take my stuff down. Anyway, all of a sudden they reversed it and they took off one of the strikes. So how that happened, whether it was because I did those things or whether, and they got scared, or whether there was some good soul out there who had some back channel, like anonymous, techie skills that was able to remove that strike. I don't know, but that's the status. So I had a great luck in that way. I'm going to call it luck. And so that just happened very recently, like, less than a week ago. So thank you anyway. And thank you for being here and for sharing this space with me and everyone who's listening. And I just want to say, everyone wants to know about the Cyrus Parsa. People have to understand that Cyrus and I get along well, that we disagree and we do it openly, and that my format is, you might see me in this situation where I'm letting him talk as much as possible, and I'm also, I'm not really, I'm not challenging him. But like, say you get to the fourth, like I'm with Cyrus, I have like 4 interviews with him. So by the time I've gotten to the 4th interview with somebody, we have quite a good rapport, and it gets into a challenge, because if they say things that I feel are either incorrect or negatively based, that will affect my audience, then I will interfere. That's my job. So I do confrontational interviews. I'm proud of it. I believe there's not enough hard questions being asked of, by interviewers out there. I think they're afraid, they're kiss ass. They're just like, yes zombies, yes men, whatever you want to call them. 99% of the interview people out there, that this sort of, I relish, a good back and forth, a healthy back and forth. I think that's the way we need to be in this very contentious universe that we live in. So that's my, statement. Sorry to take your time with this, but I'm sure that you can appreciate it, Sean.
Appreciate it, and you're very powerful, and I appreciate everything you're doing, and it's very inspiring, and
Thank you.
it helps a lot. And you have more power than you know, and any excuse for you to go into it. And hearing that story of it working for YouTube, I believe you have quite a bit of force behind you and your authority. And even if you don't need to know what it is, or if there's like hidden UFO family, soul family, or whatever, hiding behind the clouds nearby you, making sure nothing can interfere with your reality bubble, all that here or there, but you
Thank
do
you.
have a
Yes,
lot of
I am
authority.
aware of, that I have a great backing foundation that has allowed me to, assisted me really in doing what I do over these many years. So thank you for that. And thank you. And and let's stay in touch, Sean. I'd like to hear when you uncover some more sort of memories and you feel like you want to bring them forward. Feel free to contact me.
It'd be a pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Have a great night, and we'll be back in a day or two with another fascinating show. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. And I'm going to run the credits. So Sean, I'm going to let you go. I'll have you exit here, and so you don't have to sit through that. Okay.
Yeah, and tell me when it's offline and all that, and I'll
Okay.
share with some guide stuff that I can't talk about.
All right. Take care. Okay. Bye-bye. Okay, so